Ice looks calm, but apply the right bending force in the right place, and it shatters. Today, we decode why icebreakers can actually break ice. Sea ice isn't concrete, it is brittle, full of air bubbles and brine channels. This structure handles compression well, but is weak when bent. Once the ice is bent, the underside suffers tensile stress and cracks first. That is the fatal weakness, and icebreakers exploit exactly that spot. The bow of an icebreaker is round and angled to climb onto the ice. It doesn't slice through the ice. Instead, it rests its weight on the surface to make the ice bend and then break. The decisive moment is when the ice bows like a plank. It only needs to bend enough for a loud crack to echo, and the ice sheet separates immediately. Broken ice doesn't just vanish, it piles up in front of the bow and then slides along the hull. The hull design helps push these ice chunks to the sides. Why do icebreakers move slowly? Because they need to control the rhythm. Climb up, bend the ice, break it, then move forward. High speed leads to getting stuck. Flat ice is completely different from pack ice. Being compressed and stacked, pack ice is like a pile of broken bricks, thicker and harder, making breaking it more difficult and energy-consuming. When facing thick pack ice, the ship sometimes has to back up, gain speed, and ram it, but the goal is still to break it by bending, not cutting. You can tell what the ice is enduring just by listening. A cracking sound means breaking due to bending, while a deep screech means friction as the ice presses against the hull. When the wind compresses the ice, jagged ice walls appear. Ships usually approach diagonally, finding a weak point to break off sections one by one to open a path. The water beneath the ice is a silent ally. As soon as a crack appears, water rushes in to lift the ice sheet and reduce friction, helping the ice separate faster. Being off by just a few degrees in the bow angle changes the result entirely. Either the ice breaks cleanly or the ship gets jammed solid. Therefore, the bow geometry is the most important weapon. Breaking ice creates slush, a mushy mixture like wet snow. Slush increases drag, making the ship sluggish, and can press ice chunks back together in front of the bow. Once a channel is opened, the ice can close back up immediately due to wind and currents. Icebreakers must keep moving. If they stop, they will be swallowed up. Sometimes, ice that is too thin is dangerous because it creates unexpected impacts. Sometimes, ice that is too thick stops the ship dead. That's why they always measure thickness beforehand. Many people think icebreakers tear through ice like a knife. In reality, they break ice like breaking glass, bending, creating cracks, and then the sheet separates. Icebreakers work in a cycle. Press, climb, break, then release the load. This steadily repeated cycle helps it advance without getting stuck in a field of broken ice. Thus, power lies not in speed, but in weight, bow shape, and applying force to the ice's weak points. It is pure physics. Now you understand the foundation. An icebreaker doesn't cut, it breaks by bending. Next, what do you think is the deciding factor? Weight, bow shape, or piloting tactics? If part 1 spoke about bending force, part 2 is about the weapon that creates that force. The bow only differs in shape, but the icebreaking efficiency changes completely. An icebreaker's bow is usually round, thick, and angled. It is designed to glide up onto the ice instead of plowing straight through like a regular ship. The key point is that the bow angle must be steep enough to climb, but not so slippery that it loses grip. Just a few degrees of error can cause an immediate jam. The bow doesn't need to be sharp, it needs the right curve. The curve helps distribute force evenly, causing the ice to bend over a wider area and break into large chunks. Many are surprised because an icebreaker's bow looks blunt, but that bluntness helps it stand on top of the ice, using its weight like a hammer. Not just the bow, the shoulders on both sides are also crucial. When the ice cracks, the ship's shoulders press and push the ice chunks to the sides so the channel doesn't get clogged. The hull of an icebreaker is usually bulbous and smooth, with few sharp angles because ice loves to bite into protruding details, and getting stuck in just one spot means losing momentum. You will see the hull is like a long wedge. The lower it goes, the more curved it becomes. This design makes broken ice slide down and then get pushed away by the water as it floats up. The area around the waterline takes terrible abuse because the ice doesn't just hit it, it scrubs against it constantly like sandpaper grinding steel day after day. Since friction is the enemy, The paint and materials are also optimized. Just reducing friction slightly saves the ship tons of fuel every day. Ice also has a habit of piling up against the belly of the ship, creating lateral pressure. A bulbous hull helps disperse force and reduces the risk of being crushed. When the ice is packed tight, there is a detail few notice. The bottom of the ship is also designed so ice debris doesn't get snagged, because ice stuck underneath can lift the ship and cause a loss of steering. And when the ship turns in ice, the hull shape determines whether it can turn or not. A bulbous body and smooth sides help the ship slide past ice sheets instead of being locked in. Sometimes the ship has to move diagonally to break an ice wall. It is the curves of the bow and shoulders that create leverage, causing the ice to crack along a long line and collapse in blocks. The bow also has to withstand constant impact, so the steel is thick and the frame is incredibly strong, but the shape is what decides whether it breaks the ice or gets stuck. Some ships can change their draft using water ballast to optimize for river or sea ice breaking. Just changing the depth or the bow angle acting on the ice makes a difference. Looking from above, you will see the channel behind the ship is very straight and clean if designed correctly. If designed poorly, broken ice piles back up and the channel quickly clogs. This is why icebreakers look more like tools than beautiful ships. Every curve serves a goal. Climb up, break, and push the ice away. When you understand the shape, you see that icebreaking is more about mechanics than brute strength. With the right angle and the right curve, a lighter ship can still make it through. With the wrong angle, even a large ship gets stuck. So, in your opinion, what is the money feature? The bow angle, the ship's shoulders, or the smooth hull with few details? Comment below, and in part 3 we'll dissect the ice-resistant hull. Actually, ramming ice isn't as scary as being worn down by it day after day. Part 3. Why must an icebreaker's hull be completely different from a regular ship? Regular ships fear collisions, while icebreakers endure collisions constantly. The hull must be thicker, and the internal frame must be as hard as bone. The point taking the heaviest beating is around the waterline, where the ice both strikes and scrubs. This area is called the ice belt. An ice impact isn't distributed evenly. It concentrates on a tiny point like a hammer blow. Therefore, localized reinforcement is mandatory, not just thickening the whole body. The ship's frame is like a fishbone skeleton, thicker and spaced closer together in the ice zones. The closer to the bow, the stronger the bones to withstand compressive force. Because ice doesn't just hit, it squeezes laterally, pinching the ship like two giant hands. The hull must resist deformation when compressed from both sides. When ice slides along the hull, it creates long scratches and heats up due to friction. Therefore, paint and abrasion-resistant coatings are the first line of defense. At extremely low temperatures, steel becomes brittle and cracks more easily if the wrong grade is chosen. Thus, materials for icebreakers must retain toughness in deep cold. The bow is where the first punch lands, so the plating and ribs there are reinforced the most heavily. It sounds simple, but it's a weight balancing equation. The stern is also dangerous because ice debris can be sucked into the water flow, crashing into the area near the propeller. The shell in this region must also resist impact and abrasion. Don't forget the small details: sea chests, drainage holes, sensors. On an icebreaker, they must be recessed, hidden, and protected to avoid being bitten by the ice. Inside the ice, the vibration is very real. Every impact creates oscillations that travel through the entire hull. The structure must withstand long-term fatigue, not just a single crash. You will see that icebreakers have few windows and few decorative details in the ice zone because ice shows no mercy. Any protrusion is a snag point and a break point. There are places where aesthetics must be sacrificed for durability. A thicker hull means it is heavier and burns more fuel. Optimal design is a balance between durability and efficiency. When a ship travels long in ice, paint peels, steel is exposed, and corrosion begins. Regular maintenance is vital because hull failure in the ice is a nightmare. Many ships have an ice belt like armor running around the hull. This area suffers the most friction, so it is calculated separately from other parts. A difficult problem is that ice pressure creates massive force but changes constantly. The structure must be flexible, stiff enough not to dent, tough enough not to crack. And then there is thermal insulation. Cold steel meeting seawater creates icing, increasing weight and slip risks. So many areas have practical anti-icing solutions. In short, an icebreaker's hull is like a system. The right material, right reinforcement, right surface, and right maintenance. If one link is missing, the ship will suffer. So, in your opinion, what makes an icebreaker the most durable? Good steel, thick frames, or abrasion-resistant coating? Comment below. Part 4. Let's talk about power and propellers. An icebreaker doesn't need to be fast. It needs massive traction at low speeds. Part 4. Engines, motion, and propellers. How to survive amidst the ice? On the ice, the thing that kills a ship is getting stuck and losing momentum. Therefore, the power system must react quickly, increasing torque immediately without needing high speed. Many icebreakers use diesel-electric systems. Diesel engines turn generators and electric motors drive the propellers. This method provides huge torque and smooth control. With electricity, you can push hard at low RPMs without stalling the engine. That is the difference between advancing a few meters and getting stuck all night. But electricity isn't magic. Everything still falls on the propeller. Ice debris hits the blades like rocks. The blades must be thick, strong, and able to withstand continuous impact. Propellers in ice also face cavitation, water bubbles exploding on the blade surface, causing pitting and erosion. Therefore, blade shape and rotation speed must be optimized. Some ships use 360-degree rotating propeller systems, azipod, helping to change the direction of traction immediately. When needing to break free, applying force in the right direction is more important than increasing power. You will see icebreakers sometimes moving backward very effectively. Reversing isn't weak. It uses the stern and water flow to break ice debris, clearing a path before turning back to move forward. Slow, but strong. The gearbox and shaft must withstand massive torsion. Just one ice jam can create shock loading, so the shaft system must be incredibly durable. In the ice, reversing is a survival skill. The ship must shift between forward and reverse quickly to break free. Therefore, the motion control system is designed for frequent direction changes. The water around the propeller is full of gravel-like ice debris. The stern casing and the area protecting the shaft must withstand abrasion and impact. Poor design breaks immediately. Icebreakers also need energy for heating, anti-icing, and equipment, so the power generation system must be stable. Losing power in a blizzard is a catastrophe. You will notice the water flow behind the ship looks like an ice blender. This flow pushes ice away and reduces the chance of ice closing back in to pinch the ship. But strong water flow also has risks. It sucks ice into the propeller. Therefore, the captain must balance traction and safety, especially in thick rubble ice. When an icebreaker escorts another ship, it must keep a precise speed. If too fast, the channel closes. Too slow, the convoy gets stuck. Traction decides this rhythm. Many ships have 2 or 3 propellers to increase traction and maneuverability. When one line is blocked by ice, the others keep the ship moving. Why not use thin propellers for efficiency? Because the ice would snap them. In the ice, durability matters more than maximum efficiency, and design must accept trade-offs. In summary, icebreaker propulsion is a problem of torque, direction changing, and survival in rubble ice. It looks slow to you, but inside, sheer power is straining. If there is no stable traction, everything in parts 1 and 2 is meaningless. The bow climbs up, but without enough momentum to repeat the braking cycle, it fails. Traction is the foundation. In your opinion, to break ice more effectively, increase power, optimize propellers, or use a 360-degree rotating system? Comment below. Part 5, we talk about assist systems like air bubbles and healing tanks. Many people assume an icebreaker only needs a tough bow and a powerful engine. In reality, there are technical tricks to reduce friction and escape the enemy. The biggest enemy is friction between the ice and the hull. Simply reducing friction allows lighter ships to pass and saves fuel significantly. One clever method is pumping air along the hull, creating a curtain of bubbles acting as a lubricating cushion. The bubbles make it hard for ice to stick, helping the ice sheet slide away faster. Don't think of these air bubbles as bombs breaking the ice. They only help reduce friction and lighten the load around the hull, so the bow can focus on breaking the ice ahead. When the ship gets clamped, they use a healing system, pumping water from left to right very quickly to make the ship rock sideways and break the ice's grip. The rock doesn't need to be huge, just rhythmic enough to create a gap. A tiny gap is enough for water to reach the propeller and for the ship to regain traction. Some ships use an automatic healing system. Sensors detect a jam, and the pumps react instantly. In the ice, technical reflexes save the whole ship. Besides rocking, there's the hull wash trick, blasting strong water currents along the sides to flush ice debris away. The goal is to prevent ice from caking up. On deck, ice accumulation is the real nightmare. Wind carries sea spray that freezes onto railings, cables, and doors. Heaters and anti-slip measures are mandatory. The most dangerous place is the working area. A single slip means an accident. Therefore, many ships have heating systems, drainage, and continuous de-icing protocols. Some use steam or warm water to melt ice at critical points. You don't need to melt it all, just keep the surface from locking up to stay safe. Whiteout conditions are common, so observation is critical. Ice radar and thermal cameras help spot ice edges and obstacles, avoiding crashing into compression zones. Reading the ice isn't done just with eyes, but with feeling. Different hull vibrations mean different ice. Sensor systems record this for the captain to decide the path. Temperature changes make the ice change. Near zeros, ice is softer and wetter, while deep sub-zero makes ice brittle and easy to crack, but sharp and highly abrasive. The ship must adapt. Sometimes the ship must maintain the channel for the convoy behind when ice closes in. Air bubbles and hull washing keep the channel cleaner so cargo ships don't get stuck halfway. But these assist systems don't make the ship immortal. They only buy time and reduce risk. In real ice, a small mistake can lock a ship for hours. You can view this as a war between ice and friction. The bow breaks the ice ahead, while auxiliary systems keep the sides slick and clear to prevent pinching. When ice rubble piles up like mud, the ship loses traction. That's when washing and healing help create water gaps around the stern so the propeller can breathe again. In short, an icebreaker's power comes from a coordinated system, shape, propulsion, and technical tricks. Missing one part visibly reduces efficiency. Which trick do you think is most valuable? Friction-reducing bubbles, anti-jamming healing, or deck de-icing heating? Comment below. Part 6, let's talk about operational tactics. No matter how strong an icebreaker is, it can still lose if it picks the wrong path. Part 6, how they read the ice like a map. Before charging in, they know ice has weak lines, edges, cracks, thin zones. The captain always looks for where the ice is least compressed, because compressed ice is a trap. Wind and currents decide where the ice will pile up. A shift in wind direction can turn a freshly opened channel into a wall. Operation is continuous forecasting. Don't just look at the surface. Ice can be thin on top but thick underneath, or vice versa. So they combine observation, experience, and hull vibration. When facing flat ice, the goal is continuous braking, keeping a steady rhythm to keep the channel wide and clean. Stopping in the middle of flat ice is sometimes more dangerous. Facing thick pack ice, they might use ramming, backing up to gain momentum and then striking. But ramming is only effective with the right angle and rhythm. Brute force isn't enough. Ramming too much piles up debris in front of the bow, making it harder to move. Often, a better tactic is changing the angle, going diagonally to break the ice wall piece by piece. In a blizzard, the scary part is a whiteout. Everything goes white. Depth perception is lost. Speed drops, observation increases, and deck discipline becomes vital. When escorting cargo ships, the icebreaker must maintain a precise distance and speed. If too fast, the channel closes, too slow, and the follower gets stuck in the middle. Cargo ships aren't as durable as icebreakers. Just lateral ice pressure can dent their hulls. So the icebreaker must create a channel wide enough, not just barely enough. Sometimes the icebreaker has to turn back to clear the channel because ice drifts in. It's a repetitive job. Open, hold, reopen. An ice channel is like a self-closing door. A key decision is choosing the route based on time. Go when temperatures are higher and ice is softer, or when it's deep cold and ice is brittle but sharper. When you hear a consistent screeching and the ship vibrates evenly, that's usually friction and ice pressure. When you hear a crisp light crack, the ice is breaking cleanly. Sound is data. If the ship starts getting locked, they don't keep pushing blindly. They change tactics, reverse, heel, Change the traction direction, then move forward. Being stubborn means losing. Another risk is ice pinching the rudder, causing the ship to drift off course. So they always keep space around the bow and stern clear. Breaking ice near shore or river mouths is tricky. Shallow water makes ice pile up with nowhere to go. The channel gets narrower. A slight error means hitting the bottom or getting wedged sideways. Operating in ice is a lesson in patience. They prioritize a steady rhythm over showing off. Sometimes moving slower by 1 knot gets you 10 nautical miles farther. The biggest lesson: it doesn't fight alone. It relies on ice forecasts, satellites, and accumulated experience. It's where science meets the field. And there are always limits. Encountering extremely thick compression zones, sometimes they have to stop and wait. Waiting isn't weakness. It's a safety decision to avoid wrecking the ship. In your opinion, what is the most important tactic? Route selection, rhythm maintenance, or handling jams? Comment below. Part 7. We will talk about ship types and the future of the Arctic route. By now, you understand the mechanics of icebreaking. Part 7 is the big picture. Why are there so many types of icebreakers, and why is each born for a specific mission? Not every ship needs to break thick ice. There are ships for opening near-shore channels, ships for long-distance escorts, and ships for research. The mission dictates the design. River icebreakers are distinct from sea icebreakers. Rivers are shallow, ice piles up and jams easily. The sea has drifting ice, wind pressure, and towering ice walls. Lighter vessels often use diesel for flexibility and lower cost, but traveling far and long in heavy ice requires massive amounts of fuel. This is where electric propulsion and high power come into play. Many modern ships use diesel-electric or LNG electric systems. Generators produce electricity, and electric motors drive the propellers. The advantage is massive torque and smooth control. Using LNG reduces emissions compared to diesel, but operating in extreme cold is a major challenge. Safe storage and refueling infrastructure. Clean technology comes at a price. Then there is the most unique type, the nuclear icebreaker. Its strength isn't speed, but the ability to run for very long periods without refueling, making it perfect for long routes and heavy ice seasons. But nuclear power brings controversy, management costs, safety, and public trust. The most powerful technology is sometimes the most concerning. Another trend is ships using 360-degree rotating propellers. By changing the direction of thrust, they are more agile in narrow ice and sometimes break ice more effectively in reverse. No matter the type, every icebreaker accepts a trade-off. A thick hull and strong propellers make the ship heavy and more fuel-hungry than regular vessels. This is the ice tax that must be paid. Don't forget research vessels. They need stability, minimal vibration, and must not damage scientific equipment. Therefore, icebreaking for research ships is a problem of smoothness over raw power. The Arctic route opens up transport opportunities but also increases risks. Storms are stronger, ice is volatile, and rescue is difficult. Open does not mean easy. Climate change makes ice thinner in some places but creates chaotic rubble ice in others. Less ice doesn't mean less danger, it means different danger. Thus, the future isn't just about stronger ships but better systems. Ice forecasting, satellites, real-time information, and coordinated rescue. Science leads the way. Some nations invest heavily for strategic and economic benefits, but investing in icebreakers is incredibly expensive, so not every country chooses this path. Icebreakers also impact the environment. Noise, ice disturbance, and oil spill risks in sensitive areas. Opening a path for commerce means shouldering new responsibilities. Looking back, icebreaking is a synthesis. The bow creates bending, the hull pushes chunks, the shell resists abrasion, the propulsion maintains rhythm, and tactics dictate the path. Missing one element means failure. If you could design an icebreaker, what would you prioritize? Lightweight for economy or heavy for certainty? This is the trade-off engineers always weigh. And if the Arctic route becomes busier, the big question is, who is responsible for rescue when an incident occurs in a place with almost no infrastructure? In conclusion, the icebreaker is a symbol of technology and choice. In your opinion, should the future of the Arctic prioritize transport, research, or conservation? Let us know in the comments.